Tennessee This Week from WATE's 6 on Your Side starts now.
Hi, everyone. Good morning and welcome to Tennessee This Week. Glad you're with us. I'm Lori Tucker. Jeffrey Epstein is continuing to dominate headlines across the country, including right here in Tennessee, because there is a connection and there is a renewed push for information, including from our own Congressman Tim Burchett. A House panel recently voted to subpoena Ghislaine Maxwell after Burchett moved to direct the panel to do just that. And last Sunday, when speaking with Martha Raddatz on This Week, he reiterated that he wants the Epstein files to be released. However, he cautioned against releasing material that might expose the identities of victims and others in the files who may be innocent. We cannot forget the victims here. Congressman Burchett joins us now to discuss this further. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me on, Lori.
First things first, we want to let everybody know, because this is such a fluid situation, there have been major developments just since you joined us for our Ask Isaacs live stream last Wednesday. So we want to let you know, if you're watching this morning, be aware that this is being recorded on Friday, July 25th. Let me ask you a few things. First of all, now that Ghislaine Maxwell is talking, have you heard anything of what she has had to say so far?
Very little, but I think you can, when you see folks that are in the national spotlight, the president and others, making more direct comments, I suspect that some of the word has gotten out. From what I understand, that from her attorneys and word of mouth, of course, which is a lot in Washington, is that she is willing to talk. And there's a lot of talk about on the table if there's some sort of pardon or commutation, and I would not have any knowledge of any of that. But I would say, too, if her attorneys somehow, by some weird twist of fate, were be able to negotiate that, if she were to perjure herself or lie, then she would go back under her original sentence, and then it would all be for naught. So there is some encouragement there, I see, for her to tell the truth, even though, like I've said, she is a dirtbag, and what she was involved with is the worst of the worst.
Oh. So what impact, because she's already talking now, what impact will this have on the subpoena? And I want to know what you want to ask her and what you want to find out from her.
Well, I want to know, get to the bottom of it. I want to know who went to the island and who was, and maybe if there's something went on at that apartment or whatever, the condo in New York. I'd like to know what was on the files, because I have a strong suspect that some of the things that were in the files or in the tapes or what have probably been tampered with. I know that sounds like a conspiracy theorist,
really?
But what I know...
How
yes,
so?
Well, anytime you lose, there's a chain of custody, and it goes from one administration to the next, and we've had so many run-ins. I mean, do you honestly believe that Lee Harvey Oswald shot President Kennedy from the front and the back, and that a lead-jacketed bullet was found on a gurney in an emergency room that was basically almost unscathed back when President Kennedy was shot? So, and my thought is this, is we need to get this information out as fast as possible. We need transparency, which you all are about in the media, and we haven't had that. We had 4 years, the Biden administration, and now they're saying Trump's all over these files. Well, if he was all over those files in a negative way, I know Joe Biden would have put that stuff out the first day, and now it's just casting doubt on what's going on. And honestly, Lori, I don't think we're ever going to know the full story and how deep the depravity went, and the international nature of this, and was he in fact a foreign agent of some sort. Those kind of things will never go answered, because he is dead, and she's holding all the cards. So it's going to be a very interesting thing. But I
so
honestly,
you think she's singing like a bird right now?
I think she is. I think she probably is. I think she's probably been coached to sing certain tunes, but I suspect she is, and she'll name some names, and and I know the talk now is Clinton. I think he's been to the island.
Bill Clinton, President Obama.
Yeah, but they have what's called
President Trump.
and you'll have to talk to Isaacs about this, but a term I've just learned is presidential immunity, and I'm not sure how that works. And is it defensible in all cases? I don't know, but I would just caution people. Let's be cautious with this stuff when it first comes out, because it will name names. President Trump said, sure, he flew on the guy's plane. He knew him, but it's been documented that he banned him from Mar-a-Lago over 15 years ago before he even was. And I'm one of those that doesn't think he killed himself. Okay, I just can't.
Really?
I can't. Well, you're in the safest, securest building. You're you've got two people that are supposed to be watching you, and just the moment that he was allowed to, allegedly he chokes himself on toilet paper or something. I've talked to anyway. I tweeted out. I remembered I was at the beach with my wife and daughter, and we were at this little place we like to go. We were just leaving, and I tweeted out and I said, I hope Epstein doesn't suicide himself. And then, like 15 minutes later, somebody called me and said, Burchett, you just tweeted that. You're not going to believe this. And I said, what? And they said, Epstein killed himself. And I said, you got to be kidding me. And I've just seen too much in Washington, and I've become too tainted. But the interesting thing is, I'm friends with Kash Patel, and I'm really good friends with Dan Bongino. And things are so compartmentalized. I always tell everybody it's like looking down the barrel of a .22. You're just in that little area, and you're not outside of that. And you're telling the truth. You could take a lie detector test and say this is the truth, but you don't see what's outside that barrel. And I think that's what we're seeing now. And the Trump administration this stuff's been turned over them from a prior administration that they hated each other. And so I just have a real problem with all of it. And honestly, on this side of eternity, I don't know if I'll ever know the answers.
Interesting. And we asked you about this in our Ask Isaac segment about that balancing act that you have going in terms of asking for that subpoena, and then you've got the president and staying
Trump,
loyal
sure.
to him. So what was his feedback when you did this, when you took that step, when he's been kind of going back and forth over the whole thing?
Honestly, President Trump has not slowed me down. I'll just leave it at that. I don't discuss too much about our private conversations, because once I start talking about them, then I stop having those conversations. Mm-hmm. And so, but I have not had one negative comment from the White House over any of my comments, any of them, because I've been clear to say that I think that he's in there, but he's not there for deviant reasons. He caught a ride on a plane. That's what people do. Your plane's down, somebody's going somewhere, and they knew each other. But he did ban him 15 years ago from Mar-a-Lago because he said he was a dirtbag. And so, I know a lot of people that I probably had pictures made with in college that are probably in trouble now. And so, am I going to say, I don't know those people? That's AI. But anyway.
Sure, you can be on the manifest and not be guilty of something, but there are others, and the smoke continues to swirl around really two names that we keep seeing, and that's former President Clinton and former President Obama.
Correct. And I just say let's wait till we get all the evidence. I'm not quick to point a finger at anybody. Just because I oppose them politically doesn't mean anything other than that. I'd like to see some evidence.
Ultimately, what do you want to see happen in all of this case, and if you get indeed to interrogate Ghislaine Maxwell?
I want the guilty punished to the fullest fuller than the fullest extent of the law. As you know, when I was in the legislature, you covered when I was there, and I sponsored some of the toughest laws in the country, ICAC, Internet Crimes Against Children, which they would go portray themselves as a kid on the computer, and these dirtbags would send them messages to meet up, and then they'd go arrest them, and we put them in all of our grand divisions. It was pretty much model legislation. I went after chemical castration, made a lot of people uncomfortable, but I don't care. I passed the death penalty. It was ruled unconstitutional. Now they've since ruled that they passed new legislation. It is constitutional. Distribution of child pornography, things like that I found our laws were greatly antiquated, and we were able to go after them, which was, so I've said this many times, and it's not any less true now than I've said it the first time, but I've held the hand of people that have been molested, and it is, and dadgum, they carry a life sentence, and that is wrong. And I would hope in all this that people that have been molested or abused, they would say, well, at least somebody believes me, and we got to remove that stigma from those folks, and we got to love them, but dadgum, we got to punish the guilty, Lori, because we have, the probation, and I hear everybody toughen up and say, well, they're going to send them to prison and they'll get, they'll take care of them there. Well, the problem with prison now is you got so many of those dirtbags in there that it's kind of a hierarchy, and they're training themselves to be, if you could be better, a better child molester, more polished. And with the internet and the dark web now, it's just a dangerous, dangerous thing. And we've got to take this thing serious. And I hope this is a case that we do take serious.
And we're talking about 1,000
at least
victims here.
Young girls who are now adults.
Still carrying that with them.
Yes, ma'am, and I suspect some of them are no longer with us.
Well, there's at least one.
Yeah, at least. And they commit suicide. They destroy themselves. Other ways, they try to self-medicate, and it just creates a vicious cycle. And I think I go back to my Bible teaching when I was a kid, Sunday school. But that's why when they go into those villages, they destroy everybody that was involved in that, because it is such a long-standing effect. And
hopefully we'll get some answers.
Yep.
And back to your really starting the whole thing with the request for the subpoena.
Sure.
And then Speaker Johnson sent everyone home early.
Yep.
So you're here back in town for a little while. What is your reaction to that? Would you rather be up there still working this and trying to get her in?
Yes, ma'am. I always, when I'm doing interviews, sometimes I go, you see what just ran by us? And they said, what was that? And I said, it was a glacier. We were that slow. Washington, D.C. is just everybody wants to call it a swamp. A swamp's something God created. It's pretty cool, actually. What we got is an open sewer. And we go home, but I want to warn everybody, we go home every August. It's called August recess. And the way it happened was you have a August primary, so you can't go home every other and say it's for political reasons. Oh, we just take an August recess every year, so because we run every 2 years, so if that makes any sense. And they there was a bill on put up to go around the rules so you could just get it to the floor, and I signed on to that, and that's politically damaging to me, I guess, in my party. I don't. But
what kind of feedback are you getting? Have you gotten some negative feedback from your party?
Oh, sure.
What are they saying?
I don't care. I mean, I get shunned and stuff, and I don't, I was always the last guy to get picked for kickball. I don't care. I told somebody, I said, I was on your all's, I don't know, sister station or whatever on Sunday, and I said, at the end though, I'm going to answer to my Creator. I'm not going to answer to the voters or the president or Congress or leadership up there. And honestly, They cut down on how much money I can raise. I mean, I get that. You get clipped on that, but they've tried this stuff before, and y'all keep reelecting me, so I'll just keep doing it for a little while anyway. But it's you get it, but the people back home like it, and they get it too. Even people that don't like me politically know that this is the right thing to do.
All right, we're going to leave it at that. Congressman Burchett, thank you so much for coming in. Here we go with the fist bump.
I started that.
You did start that, I do believe. In any event, we'll give you credit for it. Thank you so much for coming in, and we'll be watching to see what happens.
You're a class act, Lori, and I thank you for covering this fairly and with a good heart, because this is it's a horrible, horrible issue, but it needs to be covered.
All right, thank you so much, and everyone, don't go anywhere. Our panel of pundits weighs in right after this. We are back in 90 seconds. Stay with us. Welcome back to Tennessee This Week. A moment ago, we heard from Congressman Tim Burchett. He's back in town for a little while. Now let's bring in our panel of pundits to discuss what he had to say. Joining us today, Courtney Piper, Craig Griffith, and Michael Covington. It's always good to see the three of you.
Thank you,
Let's
Lori.
first talk about your reaction. Of course, our whole conversation was on Ghislaine Maxwell and the fact that Burchett filed the motion for the subpoena to bring her in, and then she started talking before that's going to happen. So what do you think about where we are right now?
Well, my problem with this whole thing is that it's shifting the focus from the victims to the people who committed the crimes. What is it that Ms. Maxwell can tell us? Ignoring the fact that, for years that she supplied and apparently took part in, dealing with underage women in sexual situations. My focus is on those women. What can we do to make them recover from this abuse? And I heard a victim on TV last night saying every time it comes up, every time Maxwell's name comes up, she feels re-violated. She revisits the terror that she went through. And all this is to say that I think that the victims in this discussion are the people that are being forgotten. Even if she testifies in front of Congress, she's a convicted criminal. How much import are you going to give, or how much accuracy do you think that she's going to give you? I think a person in her shoes would say whatever you wanted to get 5 years off her prison sentence. So I'm not sure what value it is, and in the end, I'll probably agree with the one thing Tim said, in that we'll never know, and we'll never know. We'll never know all the details. I'm not going to go back and bring up, the JFK assassination as things we'll never know, but these people have secrets that they've taken to the grave with them.
What about you, Courtney? I know Congressman Burchett said these victims have a life sentence of their own, and that's certainly true. And we certainly, in our coverage, try not to forget them because they're central to what's happening.
Well, we can lay that blame squarely at the feet of the Trump administration because they brought all of this back up again. And it's the lying and the hypocrisy that the American public has a problem with. So if you'll recall, we got to where we are today because Trump himself and then the Department of Justice, led by Pam Bondi, said, we're going to release the files. There's a client list. It's on my desk. I'm going to review it. And then all of a sudden, there was no client list, and they weren't going to release anything. So the folks that really started getting upset about this was the MAGAverse. You had some of these very ultra-conservative podcasters and YouTubers saying, what the heck is going on here? Our guy, President Trump, said he was going to release this information, that there was a client list and was going to come out, and now they said no. So you've got the general public really being led by the MAGAverse that have problems with the lies and the hypocrisy coming out of the Trump administration. So victims are, victimized all over again. Now we have this giant mess where the Congress had to adjourn early because they weren't able to get any business done because there were congressmen that wanted to attach amendments to various pieces of legislation, calling for those files to be put out, calling for Ghislaine Maxwell to come and be subpoenaed. So we are now in this position where the lies and the hypocrisy coming out of the Trump administration has literally taken our government to a screeching halt.
What do you say, though, about Congressman Burchett? Do you think he went out on a limb by being the one who filed that motion for the subpoena?
Oh, sure. He did go out on a limb to do that. And again, that is the interesting part of this, is that MAGAverse has been leading this charge against their guy, against the Trump administration, to get some transparency and get these documents to come out.
Michael, how should he handle this backlash?
Congressman Burchett? Congressman Burchett doesn't care. He makes his mind up to do what he's going to do. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. And in his mind, at the end of each and every day, when the end comes for Tim Burchett, he answers to his maker, not a voter, not a constituent, not the president. So Tim's going to be fine with this. This is evil. Courtney characterized it as the MAGAverse. Craig characterized it as at the end. This is humanity's worst side. The evil that really is at the root of this is worse than we know. And Craig is right. The victims should be taken into consideration here, but to get to the root of this evil, they're going to have to revisit the evil that they experienced. So,
and by opening this and trying to find other people who are guilty of perpetrating these crimes against these girls, wouldn't that help? By punishing them, bringing justice, wouldn't that help the victims?
I don't know how you can. The evidence
They'll
is so
never
shallow.
recover.
They'll never recover, and I'm not sure. Like Michael says, it's evil that goes so deep. I don't know that you're going to find anyone that's going to be a big enough fish to bring those people any sort of satisfaction that they've received justice. And it went on for so long. Many of the victims were ignored for years and years and years. When Epstein was actually finally taken to court, he received a sweetheart deal from President Trump's former Secretary of Labor in his first administration that resulted in him having to leave that administration. So, I don't think there's any way that convictions or new information is going to bring justice to these people.
We're almost out of time. What do you two think, Courtney?
This whole thing is bizarre. I mean, we had the two people that were in charge of this whole web of evil. They are in prison. One is dead. Case closed, and then we're bringing all this stuff up again. And it didn't need to be that way. So what is going on here?
What is the answer?
You can release the files and give the American public some transparency.
Right. Well, and it goes back, I think the conservative people think that there's going to be information on Democrats in those files that they can use to further their political gains. Now the Democrats think that there's some information there that they can use against the Republicans to further their gains. So, now we're playing this game. And it was
three presidents have been mentioned.
Yeah, it was brought up, as Courtney said, by the bloggers and the podcasters who wanted to see all the files. Back when they thought it was being sponsored by Hillary Clinton having a pedophile ring run out of a pizza restaurant in Washington. So, they thought that was the information that was going to come out. And apparently there's none of the information like that are in the files. So I don't know what's going to happen as we go forward.
All right, as we said to the congressman, we'll be watching.
Yes, we will.
Everyone stay with us. We're going to tackle more local subjects when we come back. Stay with us. Welcome back to Tennessee This Week. Knox County's Rules Committee is considering to allow commissioners to attend meetings virtually. This is the result of a law passed by Tennessee lawmakers, which gives counties the right to decide whether they'll allow commissioners to attend virtually and vote electronically. This new rule, though, as we've been reporting, could come with strings attached. Commissioners would only be able to attend virtually if they're dealing with a family or medical emergency, if they've been called to military service, or due to bad weather. Well, let's bring our panel of pundits back in to talk about this. What do you think about this idea?
Well, I'm in favor of this at the national level, but I think at the local level, where our legislative bodies, they need to come and be present to listen to the citizens and things like that at public meetings and not vote electronically. Now, there are issues and where people can't make it for reason, no fault of their own.
Former Commissioner Carson Daly's knee surgery.
Right,
That's where this all started.
And, I think that perhaps you could allow it, but have a limit. You could only, miss like vote virtually 4 meetings out of a term or a year. So I'm not really big on this. I don't think it should happen. I think these people should come every time, unless it's an extreme emergency. And what I noticed that there wasn't an exception for pregnancy or giving birth. So, which would be something that would prohibit, some females from coming. So I think that it needs to be fleshed out farther, and it needs to be used very sparingly.
What about you, Courtney?
I like this, and I like the parameters that they put on it. I was thinking that the medical or family emergency could extend to maternity or paternity leave. I would like to see the commissioners clarify that a little bit, but the parameters that they put on this virtual option is a good thing, and it takes into consideration the stresses and the responsibilities that are on families in this day and age. Especially with the military leave, if we have elected officials, commissioners who are in the reserves, this gives them the opportunity to continue to represent their constituents. If you have surgery, if you've just had a baby, this gives you the opportunity to continue to represent your constituents. So the parameters that they put on this are great, and I hope that they make paternity and maternity leave explicit in here. But I think this is good and is reflective of the responsibilities and the stresses that are on families today.
Good point. Michael.
As Courtney was talking, I was trying to decide, do I really care whether the commissioners are there or not? And I think I've concluded that I like my commissioner at the meeting. I like my commissioner's presence at the meeting. I do not like the idea that commissioners would see this as a convenience. So if there are some stipulations, fine. I don't see a problem with it, but I like that body to assemble as a collective of 11 each and every time they get together. They have autonomy. They are not governed by the mayor. I like the idea of them getting together and handling the county's business.
That one-on-one communication, but we learned so much in COVID where we could get a lot done on Zoom.
We don't want to go back to that.
No, we do not. But there are some things that you could take away that do work in certain situations.
When I was working with the city, we had this unofficial rule that if you could assemble 45 people to come and talk on a given issue, a zoning issue, or a resolution of some sort.
By the way, 20 seconds to go.
It would carry the day. So the importance of the commissioners and elected officials being around, their delegates that speak at these meetings, I think is paramount, and I agree with what Michael said.
All right. Well, we'll end on that note. You agree. Thanks so much for being with us, everyone. We appreciate your taking part in this, and have a good rest of your Sunday.
The views of guests on Tennessee This Week are their own and do not represent the views of WATE 6 on your side or Nexstar Broadcasting.